Imagine there are two men. One of these men is governed by a handful of stringent rules governing each of his days. He has rules governing when he'll wake up, when he'll work, what he'll do, and what he won't do. The other is bound by no rules at all. He simply does what he feels like doing. Now tell me, which one of these men is the more free? The topic of this video is freedom or bondage, depending on which angle you want to take it from, because here's the truth, my friend. Here is the main point that I'm trying to get across in this entire video. We are most free, ironically, when we are most bound, okay? And what do I mean by that? First of all, it's admittedly an oversimplification. It's not clear cut. The more rules that we have, the more free we are, but that's a really good rule of thumb, and here's why. When we allow ourselves to be free, so to speak, to do whatever we please, to do whatever feels good, we tend to become our own worst enemies. And you know this from experience just as much as I do. We suffer from things like procrastination and fear and laziness. And the reason that we do that is because our nature is such that when it is freed from any kind of structure that bounds us, it works against us, especially because it's not only is the natural thing to do, the thing that feels good, often immediately gratifying, but sabotaging to our future desires, it also becomes ingrained as a pattern in our nature and in our days, and whatever we do day to day, of course, we spend our entire lives doing. So what I really want to discuss in this video is that kind of freedom. The freedom that the first man from the intro understands is counterintuitive, how it is counterintuitively achieved. And I'm going to go into depth in this video, and then I'm going to point you to an article that I've written that goes even more in depth, and then we're going to continue it in the next article and video as well. All right, so the first thing that I want to talk about here with respect to getting this freedom, which is basically just control, right? Control over our behavior so that we can freely do what we know is good for us and freely avoid what we know is bad for us. So we don't have to crawl back from the sewers after defecting because we've done something wrong, we've done something against ourselves that we know might be immediately gratifying, but that is ultimately very, very destructive to our long-term well-being. Or, on the flip side, we don't have to feel guilty about avoiding something that we know is good for us, like going to the gym or cooking something, or it's like cooking something healthy, you know what I mean? Freedom from those mistakes, okay? The first thing that I want to talk about with respect to that kind of freedom that we're after here is what makes it so hard. Why is it such a problematic, challenging thing for us to do? Because all of us are after it, right? All of us value it and we see the value of it, but we seem to fight this urge that comes out, and it goes against all of our best thinking. For myself at least, I'm not sure, you watching this, but so many times I've written out the best of my logic, my intentions, all of the things that I've learned about online. I try to put it all together, and so desperately do I want to change. So desperately do I know that you want to change. So it's not a lack of motivation, but we still struggle with something pulling us away from all of that. Why is it? Okay, number one thing that I want to quote here, most people, when they try to make changes in their lives, especially dramatic and fast changes, big and fast changes, they tend to lean most on willpower or motivation or inspiration. They feel like if they were just motivated enough, they could do it, right? They just work a little harder, try a little harder, go a little further, That's what we've been taught maybe by society or whatever. But the problem with that thinking is that willpower and motivation and inspiration, it's exhaustible. Okay, what that means is that as we use it, as we exercise that decision-making power over our lesser desires, over our weaker desires, it gets weaker. Our willpower is not as strong in the afternoon as it was first thing in the morning. And so we need some sort of system, some sort of structure to support us in keeping doing the right things and keep avoiding the wrong things when motivation is really not there. And we're not feeling all that hot, we're not feeling motivated, we don't feel like going to the gym. And I'll get into what those are exactly later. But number two, okay, the number two problem that gets in the way of our intentions to transcend our self-defeating nature, okay, is the failure to understand that human beings are patterned creatures. Okay, you see this and you learn this trading stocks. This is where I learned it from. You can probably learn it in 100 other disciplines, and you probably see it in your own life and in other people's lives. If you watch closely enough, you realize that we are not these original thinking, original idea. I mean, of course we have original ideas and we have original thoughts, but most of the day, okay, most of the week and most of the year, there's a reason that we don't tend to go from, living in one city to living in another city to living in another city, even if that's what we want. It's much easier to, when we wake up in the morning, we put our shoes on, right foot first, left foot second. We tie our right shoe first and then our left shoe, right? That's a pattern. And that is ingrained. And just like with that, something simple and inconsequential like putting on our shoes, that same phenomenon happens with our self-defeating nature. And when we allow our nature to be free, right, so to speak, free to do whatever it pleases, to do whatever feels good, those things that feel good tend to become patterns, and they work against us. And the more that we allow ourselves that freedom, the harder it becomes to transcend those patterns, to free ourselves from them. So I hope that you're starting to see what I'm getting to with the point about rules, bondage, and freedom, and how they ironically go together. Okay, there's this nature within us that makes it so that if we permit just freedom, we're actually enslaved. Are you ready? What I'm about to share with you is one of the most profound insights that I probably can share with you at this time. I am still learning and growing alongside you, and there will be other things to come along, but this, I've come across it more than once, and it's when I abide in it that I win, that I feel good, that I feel on track, that I feel I'm growing, and it's when I fail to abide in it that I know that I'm not making progress, that I know that I'm receding, that I know that I'm not in the place where I could be, where I should be. I'm not helpful to myself, I'm not helpful to others. This one insight is such a powerful insight that every time you forget it, you'll know, or you won't know, and you'll be miserable, and you'll not know why you're miserable, and then you'll come into the insight again, especially if you write like I do. You'll come to it again in a different sort of way with different words and whatever, and you'll come to it again, you'll be like, I remember now. I remember why I'm suffering. Okay, so I've been rambling a little bit. Here it is, okay? We are most free. I might have even said this again already earlier. When we are most bound. Okay, now that is probably an oversimplification, but I hope that you can already sense the seed of truth to it. When we restrict that lazy, lustful, fearful nature of ours that gets in the way of all of our highest aspirations, it makes it so much easier to tend toward good decisions because we're not allowing ourselves the option to misbehave. Okay, now putting this into practice, I understand, can be much easier said than done, but I'm going to share, I'll share with you some tips on going about doing that later, not in this video, but in the next, and in the following article as well, which is not posted yet, but I'll update you in the future. What I really want you to walk away understanding here, okay, well, I just want to plant a seed in your mind with respect to this rule insight. The power that these rules have to restrict us from that self-defeating nature, and thus to make good decisions easier and bad decisions easier to avoid, is not how many we have. It's not how fancy, how complicated they are. It's not who we learn them from or who practices them. It's not that it's Bill Gates' morning routine or Tony Robbins' morning routine or some other superstar's morning routine, and that we're trying our best to practice this really intricate, built over 30 years routine or anything like that. It's not the quality or the quantity. It is our adherence to them. Okay, one rule. It's simple enough to write on a sticky note, but followed to with near perfect perfection, with near perfect commitment, has more power to change our lives than any amount or fanciness of rules that you could ever imagine. Okay, so what is more important than crafting the perfect rule or set of rules to govern our lives and put us on track is getting ourselves to actually follow what we have, the one rule or this handful of rules that we've given ourselves. I will see you in the next video and in the next articles, hopefully. Check the description for the articles that are posted with respect to this topic. I will update them as I go forward into the future, because the following article at least, and probably ones down the road, will go more into depth about how to actually apply this in understanding, okay? Getting ourselves to set rules for ourselves, the importance of them and why we do it in the first place, but more importantly, how to actually get ourselves to follow those. Because, saying I'll go to the gym 3 times a week is one thing. Getting ourselves to follow that rule and not other things be a decision is another. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next one.